Good morning, children. Yes, you have guessed. Today we have another lovely treat of yet one more story by Rhonda and David Armitage. And today's story is called The Lighthouse Keeper's Catastrophe. Children, what is a catastrophe? Can you think of a different word instead of a catastrophe? That's right, it's a disaster. A catastrophe is a real bad disaster when something really bad happened. Children, have a look at the cover of the story. What do you think might happen in this book? What sort of catastrophe? Shall we read and find out? Mr. Grinling was a lighthouse keeper. He lived with Mrs. Grinling in a little white cottage on the cliffs. Every morning he rowed out to his lighthouse to clean and polish the light. Every morning Mrs. Grinling prepared a delicious lunch for him. At lunchtime, Mrs. Grinling packed the lunch in a basket and sent it down the wire to the lighthouse. On high days and holidays, when the sun shone, Mr. and Mrs. Grinling opened up the lighthouse, hung the key safely on its hook inside, and spent many contented hours fishing. Hamish the cat lazed about in the sun. From time to time he roused himself to chase the seagulls. This particular morning, chasing seagulls was not what Hamish had in mind. Children, can you see what Hamish has been doing? You are right, he has been stealing the fish that Mr. and Mrs. Grinling had caught. He was much too busy enjoying himself in other ways. Mr. Grinling was not at all pleased when he saw what Hamish was doing. "Move it, pussycat," he snarled as he chased Hamish into the lighthouse. Slam went the door. "That will teach you to steal our fish, you little varmint." And without thinking, he slammed the door shut. Mr. and Mrs. Grinling continued with their fishing. Soon Mr. Grinling's stomach reminded him that lunch would be very welcome. As he went to let Hamish out, he was struck by a terrible thought. The key! Where was the lighthouse door key? Of course, it was inside. Mr. Grinling did his very best to get Hamish out of the lighthouse. He rattled the lock as hard as he could. He pushed, he kicked, and he cursed. But the door stayed firmly shut. "Don't worry," soothed Mrs. Grinling. "Hamish is quite safe where he is. We have the spare key in the old teapot on the mantelpiece in the kitchen." Can you see? They rowed back to their little white cottage. And there they are, back at the cottage. The spare key was exactly where Mrs. Grinling said it would be, in the teapot. While she prepared cold chicken sandwiches, a fruit salad with loads of strawberries and chocolate milkshake for his lunch, Mr. Grinling listened to the midday weather forecast. It was perfectly dreadful. Wind and rain, with possible thunder and lightning later in the day. "I don't like the sound of that weather, Mrs. G," said Mr. Grinling. "The sooner I get back to the lighthouse, rescue Hamish and switch on the light, the happier I shall be." If you could pack the lunch in the basket, I'll take it with me. Remind me to take a screwdriver, Mrs. G. I have some repair work to do. So Mr. Grinling set off down the steep, winding path with his lunch and the key in the lunch basket. It was not until he was halfway down the hill that he heard Mrs. Grinling calling from the little white cottage. "The screwdriver, Mr. G. You've forgotten the screwdriver." "Botheration," he muttered. Climbing cliff paths for a plump lighthouse keeper was rather hard work. He put the lunch basket on the bank and stumped back towards the house. Oh, what a silly man! He really ought to have known better. Already the seagulls were beginning to gather as he turned the corner. And tomorrow we shall find out what happened next in the story of the lighthouse keeper's catastrophe, children. Now, your follow-up task based on this story are these. You can either do the easier task. The easier task is all about the reading comprehension, so our understanding of the text. So you can answer the reading comprehension questions using the evidence in the text. And these are the questions. What do Mr. and Mrs. Grinling do during the holidays? What does Hamish usually do during the holidays? Why did Mr. Grinling shut Hamish in the lighthouse? Why was the shut door on the lighthouse a problem? What solution did Mrs. Grinling suggest? What was the weather forecast for the afternoon? Why did Mr. Grinling need a screwdriver? Why did Mr. Grinling leave the basket on the bank? And why were the seagulls gathering? Now, children, if you choose to do this task, you need to make sure that all the answers to these questions are written in full sentences. You need to make sure that you use a capital letter to start each sentence, full stop to end the sentence, and do try in your answer to use conjunction that and because. I'm going to write that here, focusing on the use of conjunction that and because. So most of these questions should be answered in full. All of them need to be answered in full sentences, but most of them the answer should contain either the conjunction that or the conjunction because. So that is the easier task, children. For those of you who really don't mind writing and who are really good at writing, or who would like to challenge yourself because you would like to make your writing skills even better, you can have a go at recounting what has happened so far in the Lighthouse Keeper's catastrophe story. So in your own words, write what has happened in the story so far. However, I would like you to focus on the use of conjunctions because, when, that, and if in your own writing. So in the recount that you are going to be writing, make sure that your sentences do contain these subordinating conjunctions. And you have already all been shown how to use the conjunction because in year 1 we have learned how to use the conjunctions when and that and even if before. So please do have a go and see if you can write recount of this story using these conjunctions. So either you are going to be writing this task, so today's date and the learning intention of using the subordinating conjunctions in your writing, or the easiest task is the reading comprehension, or again, in which case you need to use this learning intention. Bye for now.